The Crimson Hollow was lit with 1,000 lanterns the night of the mating ball. Silver banners hung from the trees, and the scent of roasted meat and wildflowers filled the cool autumn air. Every unmated wolf in the kingdom had gathered in the great courtyard, dressed in their finest clothes, hoping for one thing, a chance to catch the eye of King Roran Blackthorn. Roran was the youngest Alpha King the pack had known in 100 years. He had taken the throne after his father's death, and in 5 years, he had turned a weakened territory into the strongest kingdom in the region. He was respected, feared, and endlessly desired. Every she-wolf in the courtyard hoped that tonight, his wolf would rise and claim her as his mate. Elira Voss had no such hope. She stood near the edge of the gathering, close to the healer's tent, wearing a plain gray dress instead of silk. As the pack's junior healer, she was required to attend every major event in case someone was injured. She did not mind. Standing in the shadows suited her far better than standing in the light. She watched the crowd with quiet, careful eyes. Years ago, she had believed in fated mates, in bonds written by the moon itself. That belief had died along with her mother, who spent her whole life waiting for a mate that never came, and who died broken-hearted and alone. Elira had promised herself she would never wait for anyone. She would build her own life, one healing hand at a time. She did not notice the king watching her from across the courtyard. Roran stood surrounded by advisors and hopeful wolves, nodding politely at conversations he barely heard. His eyes kept drifting toward the healer's tent, toward the woman in gray who stood so still, while everyone else moved and laughed and flirted around her. There was something about her stillness that pulled at him, though he could not explain why. He had met countless beautiful wolves that night. None of them made his chest tighten the way she did, simply by existing in the same space. He excused himself from his advisors and crossed the courtyard. The crowd parted for him instinctively, as it always did. Several she-wolves stepped forward, hoping he was walking toward them, but he moved past them without a glance. He stopped in front of Elira, who blinked in surprise and quickly bowed her head. "Your Majesty," she said. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You haven't asked me for a dance." "I'm here to work, not to dance," she said simply. "If someone gets hurt tonight, I need to be ready." Something about her bluntness made the corner of his mouth twitch, almost a smile. He was used to flattery, not honesty. "What is your name?" "Elira Voss. I'm the junior healer." He nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory. Then, without warning, he asked the question that would change everything. "Do you have a mate?" The words landed strangely in the noisy courtyard, quiet enough that only she could hear them clearly. Elira's heart skipped, unsure why the king of all people would ask her such a personal question. She answered honestly, the way she answered everything. "Not yet." 2 simple words. She meant nothing more by them than the truth. But Roran's jaw tightened, and something shifted behind his eyes, something he did not understand himself. He said nothing else. He only gave a small nod and turned, walking back toward the crowd, leaving Elira confused and slightly unsettled. She told herself it meant nothing. Kings ask strange questions. Perhaps he was simply making conversation with someone new. She returned her attention to the tent, to her medical supplies, and tried to push the moment out of her mind. But the night was not finished with her yet. An hour later, a visiting alpha named Corwin Ashvale approached the healer's tent. He was the heir of a neighboring pack, tall and confident, known throughout the region for his charm. He introduced himself to Elira with practiced ease, complimenting her calm nature and her skill as a healer, which he had apparently heard about from his own pack's warriors. "I would be honored," Corwin said, stepping closer, "if you would allow me to court you. A healer as gifted and graceful as you deserves more than a life spent hiding in tents." Elira, unused to such attention, felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment rather than interest. She opened her mouth to politely decline, but before she could speak, a low growl rumbled through the courtyard, deep enough to make the ground seem to tremble. Every wolf turned toward the sound. King Roran stood only a few steps away, his eyes no longer calm and controlled but burning gold. The color they turned when his wolf rose close to the surface. His shoulders were tense, his hands curled into fists at his sides. The air around him crackled with tension so strong that several nearby wolves stumbled back in alarm. Step away from her, Roran said, his voice low and dangerous. Corwin raised his hands slightly, confused. Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect. I said step away. The command in his voice was absolute, backed by the full weight of his alpha power. Corwin's wolf whimpered instinctively, and he stepped back at once, bowing his head in submission. The entire courtyard had gone silent, every eye fixed on the king, whose chest rose and fell with barely restrained anger. Illyra stood frozen, humiliated and confused. She had done nothing wrong, yet she felt every gaze in the courtyard land on her, judging, wondering, whispering. The king's guards moved quickly, escorting her away from the crowd and back toward the healer's quarters, for her own safety, though nothing about her had ever been in danger until the king's jealousy exploded in front of everyone. She spent the rest of the night in her small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. She did not understand why the king had reacted so violently to something so small. She was nobody, a junior healer with no rank and no family name worth mentioning. Why would the Alpha King care who courted her? The next morning, she was summoned to the palace. She walked through the grand halls with her heart pounding, unsure whether she was in trouble or simply being lectured for causing a scene she never intended to cause. When she entered the king's private study, she found him standing by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. "You wish to see me, Your Majesty?" she asked carefully. He turned to face her. In the morning light, without the crowd and the noise, he looked less like a fearsome king and more like a young man wrestling with something he could not explain. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "My behavior last night was inappropriate." Illyra straightened, gathering her courage. "With respect, Your Majesty, you humiliated me in front of the entire pack. I did nothing wrong. Alpha Corwin only offered to court me, and you acted as though I had betrayed you somehow. I don't even know you." "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair, an unusually human gesture for a man who always seemed so composed. "I don't fully understand it myself. I have never felt anything like that before. The moment he stepped toward you, something in me refused to allow it. My wolf refused to allow it." Illyra frowned, unsure what he meant. "What are you saying?" Roran stepped closer, his golden eyes searching hers, as though trying to solve a puzzle written across her face. Healers of low rank rarely show strong signs of a mate bond. Sometimes the pull is suppressed until both wolves are close enough, long enough, for it to break through. I think that is what happened last night. When I asked if you had a mate, and you said not yet, I felt something click into place that I could not name, and when Corwin approached you, it broke loose entirely. Illyra's breath caught. "You think I'm your mate?" "I think," he said carefully, "that we should find out." She took a step back, shaking her head. Fear rose in her chest, sharp and immediate. "No, that's not possible. I'm nobody, Your Majesty. I have no family name, no rank, no wealth. The council would never accept a junior healer as your mate. And even if the bond were real, I don't want it." "Why not?" he asked, his voice softer now. Illyra's throat tightened as old memories surfaced, ones she rarely spoke of. "My mother believed in fated bonds. She waited her whole life for hers, refusing every other suitor because she was certain her true mate would come. He never did. She died believing she had failed somehow, that something was wrong with her. I watched her heart break slowly over years, and I promised myself I would never do the same. I would rather build a life on my own than wait for something that might destroy me." Roran was quiet for a long moment, absorbing her words. When he spoke again, his voice held none of the commanding tone he used with his court, only quiet honesty. "I cannot promise you that bonds always find their way to completion, but I can promise you, this one already has. You are standing in front of me, and I already feel it. This is not a matter of waiting. It is a matter of choosing whether to accept what is already here." Illyra's eyes stung with unexpected emotion. Part of her wanted to run from the room, to return to the safety of her healer's tent, where nothing could break her heart. But another part of her, one she had buried for years, wondered what it might feel like to stop being afraid. "The council will never accept me," she said quietly, avoiding the deeper fear underneath her words. "Let me worry about the council," Roran said. I only need to know one thing from you. Do you feel it too? She hesitated, searching herself honestly instead of retreating into old fears. She thought of the way her heart had skipped when he first spoke to her, the strange pull she felt even now, standing close to him. She had told herself it was nerves, surprise, anything but the truth. But standing here, with his golden eyes steady on hers, she could no longer deny it. Yes, she whispered, I feel it. Something in Roran's expression softened entirely, the tension leaving his shoulders for the first time since the ball. Then give me the chance to prove that this bond will not end the way your mother's hope did. I am not asking you to wait for a promise. I am asking you to walk beside me while we discover what this means, together. Word of the king's declaration spread through the pack within days. The council, as Alira feared, raised immediate objections. Several elders argued that a junior healer with no family standing could not become the king's mate. That tradition demanded someone of noble blood sit beside the throne. Roran listened to every objection patiently, then dismissed them all with quiet, unshakable certainty. The bond does not ask for permission, he told the council, during a tense meeting Alira was required to attend. It does not care about rank or family name. It chose her, and I choose her as well. If tradition cannot accept that, then tradition will simply have to change. Some elders continued to protest, but many in the pack, having witnessed the raw jealousy and protectiveness Roran displayed the night of the ball, understood that something rare and undeniable had happened. Whispers of true fated mates had not been heard in the Crimson Hollow for generations. Slowly, resistance softened into curiosity, and curiosity into quiet acceptance. Alira did not change overnight. She remained cautious, watching Roran carefully in the weeks that followed, waiting for signs that his interest might fade the way she believed all promises eventually did. But he did not fade. He visited the healer's tent often, sometimes simply to sit nearby while she worked, learning about her days, her patience, her small quiet joys. He asked about her mother once, gently, and listened without judgment, as Alira finally spoke aloud the grief she had carried alone for years. Slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to soften. One evening, weeks after the mating ball, Roran found her again near the healer's tent, though this time, the courtyard was empty and quiet, lit only by moonlight. He held out his hand, not as a king commanding attention, but simply as a man hoping she might take it. I once asked if you had a mate, he said softly. You told me not yet. I would like to ask you something different now. Alira looked at his outstretched hand, then at his face, open and honest, in a way she had never expected from someone so powerful. For the first time in her life, the fear that had guided every choice she made felt smaller than the quiet hope rising in its place. She placed her hand in his. Ask me, she said. Will you stand beside me? He said, not because fate demands it, but because you choose to. Alira thought of her mother, of years spent waiting for something that never arrived, and she realized this was different. This was not waiting. This was choosing, together, with someone who had already chosen her without hesitation. Yes, she said, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. I choose you too. Under the quiet moonlight, with the whole pack asleep and the courtyard empty of witnesses, King Roran Blackthorn finally understood why his wolf had reacted so fiercely the night of the ball. It was not simply jealousy, it was recognition, the deepest kind, of someone meant to stand beside him through everything that came next. And Alira, who had spent her whole life believing love only led to loss, finally allowed herself to believe that some bonds were worth the risk after all.